everybody, and welcome back to MS eDiscovery in Focus. I am, of course, Ryan John Murphy. I'm a former Microsoft MVP in security. I am now a compliance TS for Microsoft here in England, in the UK. And I am a 2024 Microsoft Data Security Champion. And of course, I'm joined by Heather. Hey, Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Eckman. I am a compliance technical specialist out of the US in California. I have over 20 years of experience in eDiscovery, certified eDiscovery specialist.
Okay, thanks, Heather. And for those that are just joining us today, I think let's give you a quick recap. We do have a first episode out that we can attach to this episode, but we really came together, Heather and I, to create this podcast due to the fact that we have lots of experience and lots of passion for eDiscovery. With the new UI UX change, we thought it'd be an amazing time to create the podcast. Not only that, we've actually just come together to start rewriting the eDiscovery book that I started writing about 18 months ago. Now, that book I'm going to share with you right now is called Microsoft eDiscovery in Depth. And I just give you a quick view from it on Amazon. This is the book. Now, Heather and I are working on this at the moment, as I mentioned, and this is going to include all of the new UI UX that you're either used to or you're just migrating over to at this moment in time. And it's going to be, as it states, a full in-depth guide. I'm going to bring all of my experiences into this. We're going to bring some other industry experiences into this. Heather's going to bring her experiences into this, of course. And we've actually got a couple of people within product group that are giving us some guidance on the product as it is today, some of the roadmap items, some of the quick learnings that we can give you, and also some of the tips and tricks that you can go through. This is available for pre-order on Amazon today. So if you want to know more beyond the podcast or you want a specific readable guide, and it's very in depth, I can tell you. There's a lot of chapters in there. There's a lot of work gone into this. This is definitely going to be your best friend if you want to learn about the new UI UX.
I think
Okay.
this is super exciting, by the way, Ryan.
Hmm.
I feel like this is going to really bridge the gap between traditional eDiscovery and now eDiscovery and M365. And I'm super excited to work with you on this.
Yeah, as am I with you. This is also going to include some real world experiences from my time working with eDiscovery in the legal sector, in the finance sector, in the public sector, in the automotive sector, and Heather's going to bring hers as well. So there is going to be unique ways of working with eDiscovery and the eDiscovery premium features as it's known today. Plus, there's going to be compliance boundaries. I know a lot of people gravitate towards compliance boundaries but struggle to set them up. There's also some real deep dive information in there as well. So again, not to repeat myself, if you want something additional to the podcast that you're listening or watching to today, then the Microsoft eDiscovery in-depth books is available for pre-order today on Amazon. Go and get that guide if you want to know a hell of a lot more about eDiscovery. But for today, we're going to go through essentially just introducing you to the new portal where you can find eDiscovery and then work through a case. We're really going to start at, the first initial point within eDiscovery. Heather's going to take that away today. I'm going to come in where needed. But what I will say is, if there's anything that you want to see or hear from myself or Heather on the podcast, please do reach out to us. You can either add it into the comments on YouTube or you can email us, and I'll share the MS eDiscovery Focus email address in the YouTube bio or the Spotify bio as well. Please feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to take your comments and ideas on board. All right, Heather, take it away, I guess. Amazing.
Thank you, Ryan. As Ryan said, we're going to start today by taking a look at getting into eDiscovery in the new unified Purview portal. We'll also look at setting up a case within eDiscovery, as well as the adding data sources, which is something that has changed since the classic eDiscovery Premium. So I'm going to start out from the Purview Unified Portal. This is something that changed, I think it was last fall sometime, where we've brought together some different tools inside of Microsoft Purview. We no longer have the list of tools over on the left. So now to get to eDiscovery in the upper left-hand corner, Solutions will give us a flyout window. And under here, we have eDiscovery.
Cool.
So this is going to take us into Cases. Cases is the new eDiscovery UI. This is going to combine standard eDiscovery as well as premium eDiscovery. Classic eDiscovery is available, but this is going to be deprecated in sometime in August. So part of this podcast is to as well get you used to the new eDiscovery UI, the new look of it, the new feel of it. As you see here, I already have a case that I've created, but we can create a new case by clicking on New Case, and we can enter a new case name. We can also enter a case description. Ryan, I don't know what you put in case description normally in the US. Since we have a lot of litigation, we have a lot of investigation, we'll put in some type of matter number, case name. Sometimes, even though we have a created on date actually in the list of cases, sometimes I'll include created date as well. But anything that can help you sort or find the case.
I have to agree. I think, and even here in the UK and Europe, there's always going to be some type of alphanumeric reference that that case belongs to, whether that be for a subject right request or an internal investigation or a legal investigation. I'm quite surprised, though, Heather, how many people leave this blank and don't actually put anything in here and will put the reference for the actual case inside the case name. Now, what I always tell my customers is not every case will have just one simple search and one simple review and an export. It may go through many different iterations. I'm quite a fan of adding in like V1 for version 1 initial search, V2 dash added, so custodian, V3 dash removed custodian or added non-custodian data source. So you can kind of keep a trace of what's happening in the case. The the description box does have a character limit though, so use it to your advantage. Don't just leave it blank is my recommendation.
Yeah, I agree with that. And coming from a training background, when I would do training, anytime there's an optional description field, I would leave it blank because I'm a trainer. But when I was actually working in eDiscovery inside of a large corporation, it took me a while to get used to putting something in there, but it saved me so much time. So in this case, I'll just put in matter number. I'll click create. And this is going to take me into the searches window, and you'll see at the top, or the searches page, you'll see at the top that we now no longer have the tabs that we had in premium. So we no longer have data sources, collections, and so on. Now we have searches, hold policies, review sets, and exports. We'll do another podcast where we'll go over all of the settings for eDiscovery as well as case settings. Today, we're going to really focus on data sources, but all of the same case settings that were in Premium and Classic, as far as like the search settings, being able to assign users to cases, that is all still available, but you can skip over that if that's something that you don't use. So I'll click on Create Search to create a search. Like Ryan said, when I'm naming searches, I typically do some type of iteration here. Also, search description, same thing as what we were talking about with the case description. Here, a lot of times I find, especially in larger organizations, eDiscovery tickets are coming in through some type of ticketing system. So the requests are coming in through a ticketing system, almost like a support ticket. So I'll actually use the ticket number, either in the search name or the search description. But what I have found, especially if there's a lot of investigations in the case, these searches can build up quickly, and I don't want to have to spend 10 minutes just sifting through searches to find the one that I'm looking for.
Agreed.
So this is typically what I use. You can use whatever type of naming convention. And this will take us into the search. So since we no longer have standard and premium, you create your case, you create your search, just like you normally would. Just there's one place for it. So at this point, you're not worrying about whether it's a premium or standard licensing, nothing like that. Now, where I will say this comes into play is once we do start getting into searches, which again, that's something we'll look at in another episode. But at this point, it's all going to be the same. So we no longer have a data sources where we're adding in particular custodians. We still will add data sources in. We'll add it in by location. So here, we no longer have the data sources tab where we're adding custodians. We're still going to be adding the data sources, and we can add them by people or users as well as groups. So this is a big change from premium eDiscovery. However, it's going to operate in a very similar manner. We're just taking out that idea of custodians. At first, I didn't really like this idea because I've been doing eDiscovery for so long. So custodians is a really common concept to me. However, someone brought it up to me not that long ago that now that we're moving into the cloud, custodians is something that's a little different. And it's a little bit of a harder concept. Because we have so much collaboration going on. We have so many people involved in so many different teams working in so many different places and various documents. So that's one of the reasons for the change is to give a lot more flexibility in identifying that that data, those key players, the key locations of where you're going to find relevant data. Is that what you found, Ryan, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it ties in very well with, I guess, around the fact that if you don't understand your data landscape, eDiscovery is quite hard to go and grab that data back. So now it's classed as a source, as a data source. You know that there's actually data hosted with that user in the background. Now, simply looking for that user or that non-custodial data source, you're then able to identify what they're mapped to. And I agree with you. At first, I was like, why get rid of the custodian? Because that's a major part of what a case is all around. But I get it. I completely get the fact that it's not just a custodian. There's actually many different types of data sources that eDiscovery gives you access to. So renaming it data sources really gives it that clarity.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with that. So for people that are used to custodians, this may be a little bit of a change that takes a little bit of time just to absorb the concept. It's something that we talk about in the book as well, because I do think moving forward in the e-discovery space, custodians is something that I don't know if it will completely disappear, but I think we're going to start hearing less about custodians from that perspective of, who owns this data, and it's going to go into more of a collaborative type of terminology and speak. So on the data sources tab, we have add data sources, add tenant-wide sources at the bottom. We also have the plus sign. Under the plus sign, add data sources. Before I go here, I will just mention that if you are doing any type of tenant-wide searching, you want to search your entire tenant for specific search terms, you can search all people and groups. This is going to search all of your users' mailboxes, their OneDrives, all groups, which would be Teams, other M365 groups. So for Teams, it would be the Teams mailboxes, the SharePoint sites, any mailboxes or other locations that are associated with those groups. So depending on the size of your organization, this can take a long time to do. I typically try to lean more towards more targeted searches and not searching over the entire tenant, but this is something that I've seen used from time to time.
Heather, just on that, I think this is a really good addition to the new UI UX because I'm sure anybody listening to this, when I mention these words now, people are going to start shivering with fear. Is the fact that you had to use the CSV file beforehand and map everybody's name into it to do that tenant-wide search and all those data sources and so on and so forth. So simply having a button to click here saves you so much time. And I think, as I said before, that for me is definitely one of the benefits of the new UI UX.
I agree, but I agree in one way. In another way, I disagree with the time because if you're a large organization and you search over all of your people and groups, it could take a very long time. So
Yeah,
depending on what you're searching, if you're searching, 5 users, it's not going to take that long. If you're searching over 350,000, it's going to take a while. But like I said, there are times when this is needed. So
mm.
it's definitely a great addition. Same thing with all public folders, where you can search across all public folders in your tenant.
Do people still have public folders?
I was wondering the same thing, but apparently enough do where it's something that we've added in. It's not something that I see very often.
Nor me, nor me. Okay.
So add data sources. I feel like from a UI perspective, this is kind of a combination between in classic, standard, and premium,
Mm.
where we're adding in by location, but we're also giving you a list with the names of users, the names of teams and groups. So I think that this is a good mix between the two. So it gives a little bit more information than standard.
Yeah.
It still kind of has the people, so you can still do a little bit of that custodian mapping.
Mm.
We have broken up people only and groups only, or you can search over both. So if you're just looking for custodial data, so data for particular users, which would be their Exchange mailbox, their OneDrive, and you're not worried about teams that they were associated with or SharePoint sites, you can select people only.
I like
And
that.
I like that as well.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
we have the search over on the right-hand side. So I'll add in everyone's favorite, Adele. The one thing, Ryan, and I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but the one thing that I have noticed here is it's not in alphabetical order.
No, it's not. And I think it just randomly goes and grabs the people in the background, of course, from I think it's that LDAP call that it makes. But what I have found quite useful is you can actually have multiple people at the top with just adding a comma in. And I think as it says, enter name dash email address dash or URL to sources. You could add Heather Ekman dash Ryan John Murphy dash Satya Nadalia, so on and so forth, and it will bring all of those people up. That's something that I really do like. But I agree with you. If it did come in alphabetical order for those that like that, that would be nice. But I guess you would just go in there and search for who you want to search for anyway, right?
Right. And my guess is that it's not in alphabetical order because, again, large organizations, it probably will take a while to load that page if they're trying to sort in alphabetical order. But you do bring up a good point where when you are adding in multiple people, if you get a list of the email addresses, the UPN, or you get a list of names, you can put them in the search bar up here and just separate them with commas, and they'll add all of them in.
Indeed, indeed.
So yeah, I think that that's really useful. Um, if we're adding in groups, this is going to be teams. So here you'll see the teams names, and it's not just teams, but this is typically what we see added in as groups is the teams. Same type of thing where we give the team name, and then we also give the email address or the UPN from the Exchange mailbox for that team. Um,
Yeah. Can I just say, I wasn't really for this in the beginning, Heather. I was kind of like, why are you giving me the group? You know what I mean? It's like I want the content in the background. I want to be able to just search for like the Teams channel or the channels, plural, or the actual SharePoint site. But then I was kind of like, actually, this is probably better because everything has a group attached to it, right? So I know I can bring that group back, and it's probably easier for the engineering team to surface that group and publish it into here rather than it is to surface all of the material back in the background. But we'll see in a minute when you click onto them, you'll actually get when you manage it in the background to decide to it gives you the indication and the emblem of the Teams emblem or the SharePoint emblem and so on and so forth. So grouping them together as a group I now get it and I now like it. What's your thoughts?
I agree with that. I've thought about it before where, it would be great to search for like a channel name or something like that, but I feel like there are probably so many teams with similar channel names.
Yeah.
You're going to have to find the team to begin with.
Mm,
It sounds good in theory, but I feel like there's probably a lot of work to get to exactly what you're looking for. So I really like this format the more that I work with it.
yeah.
So I'll choose a couple of teams here. Now, if I just click save and close, which I'm not going to do, but if I just click save and close here, this is going to add all of these data sources and all locations associated with them. So this is going to add all of the mailboxes, all of the SharePoint and OneDrive sites. I'm starting to get used to, instead of just clicking save and close every time, going in and clicking the manage button. So
Uh,
this is going to give me a list of all of the sources, and then it's going to give me the associated location. So even if I'm not changing any of those locations, this is going to allow me to validate the locations that are associated with each source.
Agreed. And there you get your fancy Teams emblem. Otherwise, like I was talking about. Can you just expand the Contoso team one as well, Heather? Yeah. So I will say in here as well, if there is a Teams channel that has a private channel attached to it, you will also see that in here as a location as well. So gone are the days that you're going to have to go across and start finding that information based on the Teams channel and the private channel and so on and so forth. Everything in here is consolidated together, which I really, really like.
That is huge for teams. I know that we've added that in the classic premium in a way, but this where we have it all in one place, where if you do have private channels in the past, private channels, because of the way they're stored, a separate SharePoint site is created that is different than the SharePoint site for the rest of the team.
Mm,
And it was hard to find that in previous versions. And the same thing, I believe, in Standard and Classic, where you would have to go find the URL for that SharePoint site for the private team and add that in separately. So there was some risk there with potentially not getting all of the data for a team. And then you would have to, even before that, you would have to know that the private channel existed. So it was
yeah.
something that was added into like a lot of custodian interviews at the beginning. But we don't have to worry about that anymore. It will bring in the private channels here.
Yeah, we should talk
So,
about the sync button as well after this, Heather, which I'm sure you're going to get to as well with the team sync in the background, which I think is
yep,
amazing.
yep. So, here again, like we talked about, if I'm just searching user mailboxes, so maybe I'm just looking for Teams chats between users and I'm not worried about OneDrive, I can deselect the sites, and sites will include the SharePoint as well as OneDrive. So if I'm just looking for communications, I can deselect this. Otherwise, If I click save, it's going to add all of my data sources in. Now, one thing, Ryan, we talked about this yesterday. If I exit out of this search right now, it doesn't save my data sources. So if
Mm.
I go in and exit out, it won't save it. So if you're adding data sources in and you're interrupted, something comes up, make sure you click that Save as Draft button.
Yes, that's caught me out quite a number of times in demos where I've gone, and here's how you add your data sources in, and someone has gone, oh, there's a hold button at the top right, can you click on that? And I click on that, and I go in to the hold, show them around the hold, and I come back and everything's gone, and it's like, oh, I forgot to press Save as Draft. But that's a
Yep,
good one.
yep.
Maybe that should be
I
a big red button instead of a white one.
Yep. Well, I agree, but at the same time, you get caught by that, like after you've added like 30 custodians or more, you'll learn really quick on that one. So
You
I
will
have.
indeed.
So manage, I can go in at any point, manage sources, add more sources, remove sources. I can also remove all sources, and this is just going to start as a blank slate.
Cool.
The sync button, I clicked on that too fast. Do you want to explain the sync button while this is going,
Yeah,
Ryan?
of course I can. So this for me is an amazing output, right? Because if you think of a scenario where you created a case 2 months ago, right? And you're starting to understand that there's actually been new data sources added in your environment, like Microsoft Teams channels, SharePoint sites, and so on and so forth. What this will do is look at your actual custodian slash data sources, I mean, individuals, so Adele, Nestor, and Megan. And it will say, have these people been added onto any Teams channel or any SharePoint sites that could now be of interest that wasn't there before? So let's take, for example, if Adele 2 months ago didn't have access to the new Microsoft Information Protection SharePoint site, when you press that sync button, it will go and find whatever's new in that remit and start adding that in as well as a data source, if you like. So you've continuously got that updating data source, non-custodial data source in the background. So there should never be, and I use this lightly, there should never be a position where you're potentially missing out on data that's on a non-custodial source. You can now bring that in with that sync button. And I think, again, I think that's absolutely a massive step forward from engineering and Microsoft themselves to add that in. What do you think, Heather?
I definitely agree with this. There were some ways to do it in the classic version, but in premium. But I think that this is definitely an easier way. It's definitely an improvement from what we've done in the past. And
Mhm.
again, it's going to make sure that you're not missing any data from, a previous version of the search, or, if a user's been
Dropped off or
dropped
JML
off,
throws
or yeah,
off. Yeah, yeah.
yep,
And that's something that we should emphasize actually is the fact that we are aware at Microsoft that a lot of people go through a lot of JML processes, joiners, movers, leavers processes. And going back to my earlier scenario, trying to find that information is very difficult, to the point where I do know some customers keeps, and I'll say they'll keep a light version of governance in their environment when it comes to Teams channels and SharePoint sites, specifically for those very important users or those what they call as or they class as high risk users, and that can be insider risk, to accompany insider risk trading with investment bankers and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think again, not to repeat myself, that right there, just with one simple click, bringing that information in, it's going to save you so much time and give you that clarity back from those data sources.
yes, I completely agree. So, one other really super cool feature that we have here as well is if you click on the ellipsis over on the right hand side, you'll see that we have a bunch of options here. And most of these are options that we have not had in the past. The first one is manage data source. The top ones are just managing the data source, the individual data source. So manage data source will allow you to add in or remove the Exchange and OneDrive. Disable mailboxes and disable sites. This will allow you to disable all mailboxes or all sites for that particular user or custodian. Um, so this is a little bit easier than manage data sources if you have more than one site or more than one mailbox for this particular user. But down under Explore and Add, this is really interesting. So this is going to pull information from, I believe it's Entra.
Yep.
I get in trouble from someone on my team who tells me that Entra is not the correct pronunciation. So trying really hard to change it to Entra. So it will pull basically like a from an org chart and show you who the person's reporting to. So you may want to add that person in. Uh, as well as direct reports, as well as frequent collaborators. So who is this person? Who is this user collaborating with? So again, this is how we're getting away from the custodian idea a little bit more. Who's this person collaborating with? Do we need to look at that person, as well as what groups this user owns? So is this user an owner of Teams? What groups is this user in? So I know in the past, my recommendation from the eDiscovery perspective has always been do it through custodian interviews, do it through custodian questionnaires. And I know that that's not foolproof because people forget, like not even in a malicious way, people just forget what teams they've created, what teams they're in. I don't know about you, Ryan, but I'm probably in like 150 teams.
Oh God, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for
most of
sure.
them are not relevant to anything.
Mm.
So this is really useful. And I also think this is great from the investigation standpoint. If you are investigating someone from the silent perspective, you don't want them to know. So you don't have to go in and ask them a bunch of questions. And then remove person from data sources is just going to remove the user or the data source from the data sources tab or data sources section over here on the left.
Some big
So is there
advancements
anything
there
right?
then.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's some big advancements there from the classic version, which is, I think this goes part and part with what engineering was saying. This is a top to bottom redesign, new infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And I think what we have right here is detriment to the hard work that engineering have done and the feedback, of course, from customers as well. Because I think the frequent collaborators, if memory serves me right, speaking to engineering was one of the most frequently things asked for to have those frequent collaborators in there as well. So yeah, I really, really like what we're looking at right now.
I agree with that. That was something that was a very common request is how do I find out who this particular key custodian is talking to? How do I find out all the teams they're in? And yes, there's teams admins, but those teams admins are really busy. And frankly, like my take on it is they don't want to hear from legal asking for lists over and over again of who's on what teams and go through that whole mapping exercise. So I definitely think this is really useful. And I think even beyond identifying those locations, because this part of it doesn't just necessarily pertain to searching and e-discovery. This part of it comes into the, identify piece of e-discovery, identifying who your key players are, identifying who other players are that may not be key, but may somehow be party to, some type of dispute. And then identifying what data and what locations are relevant to those particular people, those particular groups. And I think that this is just a really, this is really going towards, I think moving away from traditional e-discovery where so much is done by, just communication, asking people, um, where we're definitely moving into like the next phase of e-discovery.
Yeah. And just while you were talking then, something sprang to mind actually, Heather, and the fact that within the world that you come from, with it, doing those searches, managing those cases, being that practitioner, looking up from end to end and managing that case, I would make the assumption coming from, being a technical person, not doing the discovery practitioner bit, this would actually save you as an e-discovery practitioner quite a lot of time. And if it does, I think if that particular case you're working on is going out to outside counsel and that outside counsel is charging you per hour or whatever the case may be, you're saving time, but you're also saving on costings from an e-discovery perspective, right? Unless I'm sure we can all collectively agree, whether you're watching, listening, e-discovery is very expensive at time. And I'm sure things like this are really, really going to give you the benefit of claiming that time back and that money back when it comes to outside counsel. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think in my experience, what I've seen a lot of times is general counsel, outside counsel, they have those conversations and person B, um, and those lists of questions tend to pile up. And a lot of times what happens is legal winds up coming to the person running e-discovery searches saying, can you search for this and give me a report? Can you search for this other person and find out if, person A was talking to person B? And selfishly, as an e-discovery practitioner, that would interrupt my day. So like I'm taking the
Yeah.
selfish approach where when I have 30 email or 30 e-discovery requests coming in a day, I don't
Oh, yeah.
necessarily want to be interrupted by, can you give me all of this information? I do it, that's part of our jobs, but this, I think, can help with that, where, we can go in and get that information a little bit easier. So I think that this, yeah, it saves on that running multiple searches to try to do some just internal investigation of who's talking to who, as well as, saving time on the other end of it with outside counsel as well.
Perfect.
So, and my opinion is, the goal of M365 eDiscovery is to get as little data to outside counsel as possible. So you want your volume to be as little as possible and your relevancy, your relevant data to be as high as possible. You want to lessen your risk of sensitive information leaving the organization, as well as lessen your cost by, um, you know, uh, not sending out as much non-relevant information.
Absolutely. And all of that you've just gone through there is definitely coming up in future episodes. And I think that's probably a great time to cap on this episode. We do want to keep them to about 30-35 minutes just from an interest perspective, but we really appreciate you joining us today, whether or not you're watching or listening. If you do like the content, please do like and subscribe. I know people get asked that all the time from YouTubers, but we does really help the channel out. And then we can take it to the next level, start doing some Ask Me Anything sessions, maybe even get someone from product group on to Ask Me Anything sessions as well. Um, okay, I think we will definitely look forward to the next one. Heather, thanks for jumping in and showing
Thank
us
you.
all through the search today. And
Yep, thank you so much. This is the most fun part of my day, so I enjoy it.
and I hope it's the fun part of everybody who's watching or listening as well. And like I said in the beginning, if there's anything you want Heather and I to go through, if there's something that maybe if you're stuck with something, maybe it can give you a little bit of support to go through. But our intention is to take you all the way through that uh, case management creation like we've done today. Next, we're going to move on to some of the other elements within the condition builder and keyword query language, I should say, and then move on from there. So we would definitely take you through that process. But in the meantime, if anything comes up, do let us know. And we are working on the newsletter in the background, which will be published on LinkedIn. I will put all of the social media connections inside of the YouTube and Spotify. bios. But again, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate your support, and we hope to see you in the next one. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Thank you.